in Central America, security-only ministries, Costa Rica and Panama. In Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador, these countries split their police functions off from their armed forces in the 1990s, and the police were stood up in the beginning, as it happened, of a crime wave and mass deportations from the United States, which made their job very difficult. So it's difficult, I guess, for any country like the United States to provide or export advice on organizational structure, as so many countries are very different in their approach to defense functions and security functions. And within those differences, there's also been a distinct movement of moving military officers out of the leadership of those organizations and accepting civilian ones. Now, in that context, I think we need to realize that there's some uncharted territory ahead where civilianization has begun to occur in both defense and police organizations. First of all, there's kind of a lack of clear roles for civilians below the vice ministerial level. There aren't many career tracks, no expectations of cooperative relationships with other ministries, a few institutional education opportunities, no cultures of planning, so to speak, no clear definition of what constitutes defense support for civilian authority, no recruitment funnels for qualified personnel. Oftentimes people are contacted out of relationships, friendships, and then contracted to be put in their positions, so there isn't what you would call a career civil service. Not that I'm advocating that. And then budgets are often limited, which make it very difficult for civilians coming into a position to be able to lead. So there you have it in kind of a basket. There's a lot to be done and a lot to be considered, but each country has a different model, and it's difficult to advocate any one policy that's going to work for them, as these institutions support the public that they're intended to support in a democracy. The security forces are a crucial component in supporting and defending democracy. I think we accept that in our own experience. The United States went for 11 years after independence without a president and national armed forces, and it was a miracle the British didn't come back just then to retake their colonies. Since then, they've undergone a metamorphosis. Colonial defense militias that were in each state are now what constitute our National Guard units in each state. Territorial development was the role of the Army, and that metamorphosed to international defense around the turn of the 1900s into the 20th century. The development of internal schools and think tanks, that developed about the same time. We used to have service secretaries that had cabinet rank. They no longer do, and they work for a single defense secretary. The development of strategic planning is a 20th century phenomenon, and our Defense Department is the largest bureaucracy in our federal government at 1.3 million service members, and is probably the biggest reason that we need to keep it under civilian control. And the purpose of all of this, whether it's the United States or any other country, is to defend territory, people, way of life, and our various constitutions. Our neighbors in the hemisphere are undergoing similar transitions. Now, hopefully public discourse and civil society will guide these transitions as well. I think RESDAL is one of those efforts, and also the NED should be complimented for supporting them, are part of those efforts that will ensure that defense and security institutions will continue to develop in a transparent, accountable way, and continue to serve the publics in a way that respects individual rights and civil liberties. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. So now we have an opportunity for all of you to participate. Please, if you want to present a question or a comment, please identify yourself briefly, just with your name and institutional affiliation. Sophie.
Yes, I'm Dr. McCauley. I'm Dr. McCauley. I teach at the Marymount and Australia University. Third world development issues. And the problem of defense, police, armed forces is very common in many developing countries, especially where you don't have stable institutions. So the lack of stable institutions, for example, in Latin America, is one of the key factors leading to what we are talking about. So your assessment of the situation and the solution you can try to suggest should take into account the formation of stable states, which also include, of course, the having a more professional military. So that this must go in a package together, a stable state. You cannot put the money on in trying to have the police forces, etc., without putting that into the context of the state formation as the overall institution. So you will have some problems. So there's a need to help build a stable institutions. Of course, where the civilian forces would play a key role. So my focus is on having an overall apparatus of institutions, state institutions.
Thank you. Next, there's a question, gentleman here.
Yeah, Miriam, congratulations for organizing this seminar. This is a very important subject, and it's not discussed enough within circles in Washington and elsewhere. I think the panelists talked about a lot of the key issues that need to be addressed, and Juan sort of posed, I think, the key question, which is, what is the next war? What should people be organizing themselves for? And I think that the answer is pretty clear. You know, the next war is to enable the countries of the region, and there are a great variety of them, to be effective within their own domestic projects and internationally. And to do that, they need to have resources to develop human capital. They need to be able to spend money on education and on health and on local security to create a kind of material world that people can live in, and they need the institutions that that can focus on that. And I'd want to underscore Marcela's point about the lack of spending on institutional design. In order to think ahead how to organize that, the way not to do it is to spend lots of money on the military doing things that could be done much less expensively by police, by teachers, by health workers. 60 years ago, when the Guatemalans and the Ecuadorians sent their military into the rural areas to do health and education, they never thought they would be there for as long as 20 years. They never thought of sunset legislation, and there's more of them there today than there was when they imagined it, when they began. I'd say in part because of lack of institutional design. So I'd like to underscore these points that were made by the panelists, that there is a next war. The next war is to figure out how to take care of security issues within countries in a way that's efficient. And it's really problematic for the Central American countries because they aren't effective revenue generators. The tax rates in those countries are among the lowest in the world. It makes it even more important that there be an efficiency between the armed forces and the other institutions of society. And I think all of the speakers today emphasize that in one or another way, and I congratulate you for organizing the panel that way.
Thank you very much. Let's get like 3 or 4 more questions, and then the panelists will answer. And please
Hello.
remember to identify yourself and mention your institutional affiliation.
Yeah, I'm Louis Goodman from American University.
Hi, I'm Marcela Nieto Sarre. I'm Mexican. We are in a leadership program in Mexico City of Fundación Ethos, and we are doing an internship at Hudson Institute. Well, my question is for Marcela. You talk a little bit about Guardians of the Nations program in Honduras, like one of the only ones like doing some of the preventive work. I would like to know a little bit more about it. And can I do another one?
Yes.
Well, to Juan, you said a little bit like Mexico is irrelevant to Central America, and I think it's really like a key country for, especially for security issues. I would like to know, like, what do you think its role should be in security issues?
Thank you very much. Yeah, let's do a couple more.
Hi, my name is Caroline Racklin. I'm with the International Rescue Committee. My question has to do with humanitarian aid. And we haven't heard too much about either the emergency reactions or humanitarian aid, except for in one of Marcela's slides in the first presentation. And it's interesting to me because in the US, the Department of Defense has a huge budget for humanitarian responses internationally and nationally. And the military is sort of a go-to organization for emergency aid. So do you feel as if this is actually appropriate? This is an appropriate use of the military? And do any Central American countries do similar things?
Maybe one more for the first round, and then we can...
Yes, hi, my name is Martin Friedel. I'm with one of the NetCore institutes, the Center for International Private Enterprise. My question to the panel is sort of lessons learned from other regions or, other countries in Latin America about how to go about addressing this huge security challenge that Central America is living right now. Of course, we read a lot in the news comparisons, Colombia as an example. Obviously, countries are different. Each one comes from a different history. Militaries have played a different sort of historical role in each country, but there's certainly, I imagine, some lessons to be learned about both how to better train, I guess, the military to sort of step into these new roles, which are not really the traditional roles which they were designed for, which is more sort of national defense against foreign enemies and so on. And I just wanted to know if you could comment on that. Thank you.
Maybe just one last question over there, and then we can do, first
Liliana
round.
Henao with Voice of America, and I will be asking my questions in Spanish. I'll be more than happy to translate them if necessary. But tengo dos preguntas, está dirigida especialmente para Javier y Marcela, pero abierta al panel. La primera es si dentro de su investigación me pudieran resumir cuál es el estado actual, el rol actual de las fuerzas militares en el ámbito de seguridad